A very good evening and warm welcome to all the participants. We are extremely thrilled today to have Air Marshal Kumar with us. Good evening, sir, and welcome to this 104th Leadership Conversation.
Good evening.
It's a matter of great pride to actually share the screen space with you, a person like you, a strategist and a hero, and we would like to learn from you quite a bit in the next 60 to 70 minutes that you have permitted us to deal with you. So for the benefit of the audience, I will make an introduction, a small introduction, and then I'll request you to make your opening remarks, and then we would have begun the conversation after that. So allow me to share my screen, please. As you all know, these are leadership conversations, and I hope you're able to see my screen. WiseViews leadership conversations, and this is the 104th. We are extremely blessed to have Air Marshal Kumar with us. He's going to talk about humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. So this intro and the talk will be for the first 30 minutes or 25 minutes, and then we have Q&A, 2 clusters of Q&A, and then we'll sum it up. That's the broad agenda. Air Marshal C. Kumar, PVSM, AVSM, VSM retired. He is a strategist, military tactician, aerospace leader. Air Marshal Kumar served in the Indian Air Force as a commissioned officer for 39 long years. He has extensive experience at various levels of the IAF and the Government of India as a military planner and administrator, national security specialist, operational leader, flying instructor, evaluator, mentor, academic, military tactician, and strategic analyst. He is a leader and a manager in varied environments with good record in task achievement and motivation and communication skills. He has extensive experience in addressing trainees at all major defense training institutes, including Lal Bahadur Shastri National Academy of Administration, Mussoorie, on security. He is an aviator with vast experience of all facets of aviation in different terrains, with a clear understanding of the IAF's operational and equipment needs for the next 2 decades. That's amazing. Air Marshal Kumar commanded a flight squadron, the Elite Fighter Weapons Training School, TACDE, a large flying base, and 2 operational commands of the Indian Air Force, the Eastern and Western. Experienced in all inter-branch issues impinging on operational preparedness, maintenance, administration, human resource management, legal, procurement, and finances. That's really, really vast and of all-round experience. Air Marshal Kumar has been a team leader of a diverse team at Air Headquarters as Assistant Chief of the Air Staff. He was responsible for offensive operations, procurement of weapons, and coordination with DRDO and Ordnance Factory Board for progressing indigenization, training and acquisition of equipment for CBR and protection, UAV, ISR, and special forces. Some of the notable achievements, he as a leader of joint IAF study team on various subjects, that is UAV procurement, study on enhancing resources at field units, force structure planning, and basing of assets. He conducted many major Indian Air Force exercises efficiently and safely. Exercise Gagan Shakti 17, a pan-India exercise, Operation Logistic exercise, and exercise director in charge of ex-COPE India with USAF in 2005, and exercise Indra Dhanush with RAF in 2006. This is something, what I'm going to read is what you will note. He has planned and executed the much talked about surgical strike at Balakot on 26th February 2019, pretty recent. Thank you, sir. Thanks for joining us. I'll also take a moment to introduce my esteemed colleague, Professor Prasad. He heads the online MBA program. His teaching areas are strategy and entrepreneurship. He carries 3 decades of rich experience as an entrepreneur himself and a professional in the corporate world, and now as an academic. He obtained the BTech from IIT Bombay and subsequently PGDM from the prestigious IIM Kolkata. He published several articles, edited books, presented papers in various conferences in India and abroad. Welcome to you, Professor Prasad.
Thank you, Prof.
With this introduction, I'll stop sharing my screen and dedicate all the time to listen to some of the war stories, as well as these stories which swell our heart with pride. He is one of the brightest sons of India, and I'm extremely blessed and happy to report to you that I should talk less and listen more to Air Marshal Kumar, and that's what all of us will do. And in Q&A, please stand by. You will have direct opportunity to interact with Air Marshal Kumar as well. Over to you, sir. Thank you so much once again.
Good evening, sir. Thank you so much for your kind words. I'll just share my PPT with you. Good evening, all listeners. It's indeed a great honor for me to interact with the intellectuals this evening. I hope it is pleasant for both of us. I'm sure you're aware of the daring operation on the night of 27th April, wherein a C-130 landed in a small airstrip north of Khartoum to rescue 121 Indians from conflict zone of Sudan. The airstrip had a degraded surface, no navigational aids, no approach aids, no fuel, hostile territory, and this was done at night on a dark night with no lights. The sheer audacity and the flawless execution has impressed the world of what is the capability of the IAF. This is akin to what the Indian Air Force did when we rescued our diaspora from Kabul. And also when I look back at Op Cactus that was done in 1988, when IL-76 full of para-commandos landed in Maldives to put down an attempted coup there. I have personally witnessed the courage, the resourcefulness, and the capability to achieve tasks in adverse circumstances in the last 4 decades by the Indian Air Force. Be it the Bhopal gas tragedy of 1984, the Bhuj earthquake of 2001, the tsunami of 2004, or how quickly we reacted when there was an earthquake in Turkey a couple of months back in February. The IAF operates on the principle of 3 C's. That is capability, capacity, and credibility. The military is very fond of abbreviations and mnemonics. I'll keep explaining them as I go along, but they would be in use. To look at how it all started, initially, the responsibility of such disasters, and it was mainly to do with floods and cyclones, it was the responsibility of the agricultural ministry. Progressively, they looked at what the government could do better. And multiple committees were set up. A high-powered committee was set up in August 1999, just prior to the super cyclone in Orissa. And a defense disaster management ministry was set up. Thereafter, an all-party national committee met in February 2001 after the Gujarat earthquake. Thereafter, from that meeting, there was setting up of National Disaster Management Authority as a department under the Ministry of Home Affairs. The Disaster Management Act was enacted on 26th of December 2005. And the national policy on disaster management was promulgated in 2009. The NDMA plan for what it is planning to do in future was, as a comprehensive plan, was issued by the current government in 2019. The same policy, when you look at what was the vision, to build a safe and disaster-resilient India by developing a holistic, proactive, multi-disaster, and technology-driven strategy through a culture of prevention, mitigation, preparedness, and efficient response. The same Disaster Management Act of 2005 got reviewed by a task force. And this task force looked at what all we could do to improve it. And we looked at it in a very holistic manner. So the approach was a paradigm shift from response-centric to a holistic and integrated approach. It was backed by institutional framework and legal authority, supported by financial mechanism creation of new funds for both response and mitigation. And a disaster management structure was formed. This NDMA structure has 3 levels. At the top, the NDMA, the Prime Minister himself is the chairperson. At the state level, the chief ministers of the state are chairperson. And at the district level, it is the DM as chairperson and the chairman of Zilla Parishad as co-chairperson. The National Disaster Response Force is the center of all this activity. They also made the National Institute of Disaster Management, which is actually a change of name of National Center of Disaster Management, which was set up under a Government Act of Parliament in 1995. It looks at policy decisions and collates data to see how to take the whole process forward. When you look at the structure of the National Disaster Management, it is at multiple levels. It is an interactive system, not exactly, I would say, hierarchical in that sense. It is a mix of all. So you have a high-level committee and the National Disaster Management Authority, and we have in that a National Executive Committee. The CISC, or the Chief of Defense Staff, who is the boss of Headquarters Integrated Defense Staff, he actually joins up with the NEC as far as the defense is concerned. And thereafter, it goes to the state and districts. I also must say that it is a participative organization, and also local bodies, NGOs, and even when you have resident welfare association, they all can pitch in and do a lot as far as mitigation of disasters are concerned. When you look at HADR organization, NDRF, that's the National Disaster Relief Force, was constituted with 8 battalions in 2006. They actually were shelved off from the CAPF, Central Armed Police Force. And thereafter, it was built up. Currently, we have 16 battalions. Each have 1,149 personnel. And it is headed by a DG, Director General for NDRF, a 3-star from the IPS. Each battalion is capable of providing 18 self-contained specialists. Each search and rescue team has 45 personnel, which includes engineers, technicians, electricians, dog squads, and medicals and paramedics. Defense forces have always been part of this right from the beginning. But as NDRF improves with more manpower, more equipment, more training, I guess the military will slowly be weaned out from this task. This organization is also capable of reacting for CBRN threat, that is chemical, biological, radiation, and nuclear, which is the purview of the defense forces and, of course, the Atomic Energy Department. This map is just representative. I'm sorry, it is not a current map, but it shows that we have had disasters all over the country at various times of the year. India is a tropical country. We have varied terrain, right from high mountains with very low temperature. We have a place which has got the maximum rainfall in the world. We have deserts. It has varied terrain. The density of population is high. There's adverse effects of environmental degradation and climate change. Global warming is not helping at all. And as we progress, these natural disasters are going to become more and more severe. And that's what we require to watch out against. When you look at data that's been collected, if you look at this map, the darker blues are where it is more susceptible to high winds and cyclonic hazards. And as the color becomes lighter, it is much more simpler. Today, we have very good data for more than 50 years. And also, we are collating data from different points of the country in terms of temperatures, pressures, winds. It's all collated and churned through computers to give a numerical weather prediction, which has become that much more active as we go along. which is important, especially when we look at cyclones and things like that. This map shows the earthquake-prone area. The dark brown are all seismic 5 zones. And as you go lighter, are going to seismic 1. But if you notice, the entire north where the Himalayas are there, it is very new, the Himalayas. And therefore, it is prone to earthquake. Based on this data is where we have positioned our NDRF forces and regional response centers, primarily because we should be able to react within that golden hour to see how we can protect maximum amount of property and human beings. As I mentioned, these are formed from the CAPF. It's located closer to vulnerable areas, and they are specially trained for that location. So if you look at the 10th Battalion at Vijayawada, it has got a regional response center at Hyderabad, Visakhapatnam, and Bangalore. Just as I said, is representative. When you look at the military, we do provide aid to civil authorities. And as per our roles and mandate, these are the 4 conditions in which we provide such aid: maintenance of law and order, maintenance of essential services, assistance during natural and other calamities, and any other type of assistance which may be needed by civil administration. But as a service, we have been part of the government and participating in every activity that is possible. If I tell you that in COVID, we flew more than 1,500 sorties, more than 300 hours, flew more than 2 million kilometers, carrying oxygen, carrying medical equipment, carrying vaccines all over the place. Post demonetization, nearly 600 tons of currency notes were transported by the Indian Air Force to different parts of the country. Just to mention that on every activity, it could be Maldives had a problem wherein they ran out of drinking water. And for sustained effort, we sent across 100 tons of drinking water to Maldives on daily basis till their RO plant and things like got back online. So we are part of it all around. And therefore, this is what the statement is, that the defense forces, because of their excellent discipline, organizational cohesiveness, pan-India footprint, huge capacity in terms of logistics and operational capabilities on land, water, air, are suited for HADR. But progressively, as NDMA becomes more and more confident and experienced, they will take over this activity. The defense have delivered well during all HADR contingency due to well-organized expertise in reconnaissance, damage assessment, evacuation, setting up relief infrastructure, restoring communication lines, providing medical facilities, security cover, and of course, distributing ration and supplying clothing. When you look at HADR, I personally have had interacted with a lot of countries in which we don't want to have military alliance. So it could be, though we have sent HADR or relief material right to USA after the Hurricane Katrina, or Indonesia after tsunami. But we have found that it is best to act or interact on something which is common or which is not intrusive. And it is best so that we can know the organization and how the communication protocol works in these countries. When I look at IAF and HADR capabilities, IAF is well organized for varied tasks. We are going to be the first responder because air is the fastest means of reaching the spot. So unless NDMA has its own aeroplane, Air Force will always be used as the first responder. Our readiness state is 24/7. It's never a day that we have a holiday. Somebody will always be on readiness level. We have trained physically fit manpower. And because we operate aeroplanes, we have the safety equipment, the firefighting equipment, the crash tenders and things like that. In fact, As we have been doing HADR on a regular basis, If you won't believe it, that in my office, as I became senior leadership in the service, the TV was always on in one corner on mute. And if we saw any tragedy taking place anywhere, we started getting ready to see how we can help out when we are asked for. We today also have many posts which are continuously maintained by air. When I say maintained by air, the Indian Air Force transports 23,500 tons of material to the other services at their location, which are far-flung and where infrastructure is not adequate. We have winter stocking, which is done in summer for all these areas, which itself gives us a practice to keep it going. We have also close to 3,000 tons of load, which is was dropped by helicopters or landed by helicopters. But in spite of the infrastructure coming up, there would always be places like the Siachen Glacier or in a far-flung mountains in Arunachal Pradesh, where for sustenance of large number of troops, the communication lines may not be adequate. Just as a practice, when I was the Air Officer Commanding Western Air Command, on 18th of December 2018, we airlifted 463 tons of cargo to Leh in one way. It was not to show the capability, but it was just to test ourselves, because it's just not transporting that load. The load has to be collected. It has to be useful. It has to be current. And the people up there would require it, because even if I bring in so much of load, they don't have so much place to store it. It has to be moved across to the people who require it. Air Force is a networked environment. That means at all times, I know exactly what my resources are in terms of equipment and manpower. And second is, I know what is the readiness state of that equipment. Therefore, I know how I can task them and where to task them. Because the entire setup is networked, I have centralized planning. So I give a task online. It is executed in a decentralized manner because I'm confident that with his training and capability, he does not require my help. Once he's given a task, he goes ahead and uses his resourcefulness to go ahead and deliver this load. I've been an Air Marshal in the Air Force for nearly 5 years. And in my time, at least, I've been having HADR conferences annually as a religion. And this, we had representatives for NDMA, NDRF, district, and also the stations and units. And within the area of responsibility of ours, we subdivided the area so that people could easily meet each other, exchange contact numbers, have face-to-face meeting, have presentations of each side to look at how they look at HADR and what is to be done. And then we invited these people to each base to familiarize them with helicopter and transport aircraft and look at, how winching operation is done, how you load the stuff on a helicopter, where it is stored, how do we drop it, so that they get a fair idea of what is required and how to do it. As far as IF capability is concerned, we have got more than 400 helicopters and close to 200 transport aircraft. So we are, they say, third or fourth largest air force in the world. We have excellent reconnaissance capability in terms of aircraft, satellites, and UAVs. We have rapid action medical teams. These rapid action medical teams are located at big transport bases. Rapid action medical teams are capable of setting up a field hospital which can do everything like a good hospital, right from major surgeries. That means it has got generators, oxygen, and everything, and equipment. It can be moved, but it's so huge, it requires area for it to be deployed. So we have been deploying them in all contingencies, but we are keeping it at a smaller level. The entire RAMT team has never been deployed. We also have, with our own money, improved patient transfer units in helicopters and transport aircraft. This is to ensure that we have stretcher-based patient transfer units, which has got ECG machines, oxygen, etc., so that we can transfer seriously injured patients from one point to the other till they reach their tertiary hospitals. We have bandy bucket operations, which is essentially helicopters able to carry huge bucket from any open source of water. They can lift it. We have tried it out in even congested areas, although it is meant more for open areas because such large volumes of water falling on somebody can hurt them. We are able to set up standby power, communication systems. We have adequate rations and cooking facilities. In fact, every time I look at rations and cooking facilities, I know every time we had a contingency, these gurudwaras were a major help in terms of utensils and able to provide that kind of stuff for the people. And we are capable of scaling up the effort. Every eventuality, I remember of Bhuj earthquake, is actually earthquake entire Kutch, and a lot of airfields were down. The runway was cracked. And within the campus of an Air Force station, it is like a community living. So if there are casualties, the whole station gets affected because finally it is your family members who died or are seriously injured. In spite of that, within 48 hours, that Bhuj airfield was made operational because that is the only way that large sources of equipment to be flown into Bhuj. But as the Air Force is progressing, we have C-130 helicopter transport aircraft, which can carry 33 tons of load or 74 stretches. The C-17, which can carry almost double, 77.5 tons. Chinook helicopters have come in, which can carry 9.6 tons of load. So basically, we have improved our capability as we've gone along. In the Air Force, we look at graded response for all such activities. It's called 4 Rs. The 4 Rs are readiness, response, reduction, that is mitigation, and recovery. And we look at how we can help out and see how we can reduce this issue. When there is a problem, what is it that we require? First of all, I remember I was in Gandhinagar when we had the Gujarat floods. And what we required was accurate coordinates of the location. Today with smartphone, you can actually transmit that information. There is now an emergency response support system, which has a single number. The number is 112. Therefore, people should be able to communicate. Whenever there is a disaster or problem, first action is survival. That means you must get the danger out of the system. Second is power supply would go. You should be able to communicate to somebody what is your problem and where you are. Because if you have communicated the problem, half your load is also reduced because you're told somebody. Progressively, you'll always find that there would be a communication channel point of contact because helpline numbers will come up on television and places, but you have to have some way to communicate. And power will be such that your batteries will run out, your mobile will run out of charge. So even during Kerala floods, the Chennai IIT ensured that they had only battery charges, battery banks, which could be taken to this place, which were a great help. And they require to specify requirement as to what is the problem, where is it? Do you have sick patients? You have whatever the issues. Then when you look at providing aid to that place, you could drop it, but you have to have an open area. Please do not rush to the helicopters because they find it difficult to drop something with people below it. You require a landing zone, which requires a particular size because the helicopter rotors should not hit something. Otherwise, the helicopter itself will collapse. And a 25 by 25 feet would be broad enough to cater for most helicopters. You have to remember the downwash of the helicopter tends to throw up every loose article below it, which can hurt others, or it can even damage the rotors of the helicopter when it churns up this muck. When you look at relief packets, it should be 4x4 in size. It should be around half kg packet. It should have food that would last longer. If you're looking at milk powder, it's better than having milk because carrying liquid becomes an issue. The packet should be such that it doesn't bust if it drops on the ground. And what we look at is, medicines, tentage, blankets, emergency lights, communication kits, power backup, mobile chargers, and emergency supplies. We learned the lessons as far as Kerala floods is concerned, or even in Uttarakhand, that people are charitable, a lot of stuff comes in. That used clothes are actually of no use because it never gets used. And all this relief supply that comes in, it becomes another logistic problem trying to manage it unless it is segregated well and you know exactly what it is. For evacuation by helicopters, we got to stay clear of trees and electric cables. And there would be VIP visits and media. It is something which would be there because people are concerned in information as we passed, but it should not take over the priority from rescuing people in that golden hour. That is important, and we must remember that. I will also cover one natural disaster that we had and how we went about it. Uttarakhand had flash floods in June of 2013. The problem started on the 14th with a cloud burst. The military was requisitioned on 16th of June. 69 relief camps were set up. 1,51,000 were looked after, of which almost more than 1 lakh were pilgrims from all the temple areas. 900 trucks of relief material came in, which, as I said, sometimes becomes a logistic problem trying to handle it. Medical teams were set up. We had 105 satellite phones distributed. The UAVs flew 50 sorties to locate human beings all over the place. But when you look at all these places, you also have to remember that the weather was bad. It continued raining, and the situation did not open up for quite some time. This IBM team came in, and they looked at information, that is, the telecommunication department gave them call data of all the towers there, of all the mobiles that came up between 14th and 19th of June. They looked at all those who are still available and all those who are not available. The social media was used extensively by this team, both Twitter and WhatsApp, to get photographs of people. DNA samples of 319 dead bodies had to be communicated to figure out who they are. Because finally, rescuing those who are alive is important. But there is a requirement of closure for those who died at the spot. Death certificates had to be issued because finally, the family requires closure. I know it may not be priority, but it has to be done simultaneously, the whole process, because you can't go back to it at a later time. As far as the IF is concerned, a task force commander was set up at Jolly Grant Airport at Dehradun. It was largest relief operation as of then. 45 helicopters and 13 transport aircraft were used. The C-130 was used extensively for mobile weather, airborne command post. We found that the helicopters operating in the sector ran out of fuel. And the oil PSUs were just unable to get those ATF, aviation turbine fuel for the helicopters there. It's not only Air Force helicopters, there were civil helicopters also operating there. So the C-130 was used to transport this to Dharasu. Dharasu itself was a disused airfield. It had vegetation growing. ITBP cleared up the runway for the C-130 to land. It was a continuous process, where we were taking action at every level to see how things are moving and what is to be done. On 25th of June, we had a Mi-17 crash over Gaurikund. 5 IAF, 9 NDRF, 6 ITBP officers died in that helicopter crash, which was a controlled flight into terrain because of poor weather and our urgency to see how we could help out and bring in relief to them. So this happened somewhere just before noon. We knew that action has taken place. It took us some time to locate that place. We had to send our Garud commandos with armament to protect, secure that crash site because that place was full of wild animals. No, I know all 20 of them perished in that crash, but the bodies of those left behind had to be preserved so that the family could say, yes, no, we could give them a final send-off from this world. AIM-32 was used for bridging equipment. I flew 3,702 sorties, they all statistics, and lifted more than close to about 900 tons. In the phase 2, which continued for quite some time, we helped in rebuilding roads, communication, bringing heavy equipment and shelter for locals in that area. The army itself supported 8,000 troops, 150 special forces, 14 helicopters. They made temporary bridges, searched every trail that was possible. Engineering tasks were done to clear landslides and breakdown of communication. And it's not only the army. The Navy was there with the Mark boats. ITBP and all the CAPF forces were all there to help out and see how we could reduce the tragedy. When we look at what are the lessons learned from such events, is that there'll always be a dilemma between development and environment protection. Both are important. There's no way one supersedes the other activity. So whatever development has to be made, we have to look at how to make it safe. Building norms have to be based on seismic zones. And Turkey is where we learned a lesson how concessions were given, causing such serious damage and death. Environment clearances are sometimes considered a pain in the process, but somehow there are knowledgeable people who will tell you what should be done and what should not be done. When you go to hill stations, could be Mussoorie or Dalhousie or Kullu Manali, you see the face of those mountains, which are charred because of landslides, purely because of felling of trees. So there has to be a balance of how we conserve that soil. I come from a small township called Chenganur in Kerala. The Pamba River flows next to my house. When I was young, we had sandbanks on that river, and we used to run and play there. By the time I became an adult, so there's not a single grain of sand in that river, not a single. Progressively, the cost of land increased. That people put stone embankments on the banks because the river meandered. And wherever it meandered, it took away somebody else's property. So now you can't get into the river. The river is mucky. And every time it reaches its banks, it becomes that much more difficult to control. This builders politician nexus is purely to say there's a natural lay of land where the stream flows, where the water is able to move out, lakes. Those have to be protected to allow for water to move out in its natural course. Otherwise, you're going to have a problem. You have purely concrete surroundings with the drainage block. You're asking for trouble, but that's how it is. Floodplains requires to be protected. These are the lessons that we learned as we went along. When you look at just data, planning and preparation always pays. The number of casualties in the last 4 major cyclones of same magnitude in Bangladesh has reduced significantly only due to prior communication, adopting preventive measures, proper planning, preparedness, and response. You can see the numbers yourself. That of the same kind of calamity, it has reduced from 5 lakh to about 100. And Odisha has also done tremendously well because poor state continuously get hit by cyclone on that side. In my conclusion, I would say that NDRF is continuously improving. It's well organized. It's got 16 battalions. It is improving its training because finally you require empathy in dealing with this. You're not going there and doing anybody a favor. You're doing a task. You're doing a task to see how we can rescue people. It has performed well in all our data that we have. But with so many agencies in India and the bureaucratic machinery, better coordination is required. I will not elaborate on it unless somebody asks. And such talks on HADR, I know it is not a business model where you can do business with it. It is important that there's increased awareness among people so that we can mitigate such situations, are aware of it, and take action before it is too late. Or it is an insurance policy that we have to have. With that, I would like to stop. I notice I've taken more time. Thank you very much. I'm open to questions.
Fantastic, sir. It's a fantastic account of whatever we can understand about HADR. You have gone as high as tens of thousands of feet to give a view about the sea level. And also you have given us a lowdown on ECG machines and capability to carry water to other equipment to deal with when we are transporting the disaster affected victims. I think it couldn't have gone better than this in terms of understanding the strategic perspective from the top and at a ground level from someone who's been there and done that kind of view with nitty-gritty detailing and also some kind of remedy of how we can handle it and how we should actually deal with it. So an approach acumen is something which you have enriched us with during your lecture. Thank you so much, sir, for doing this detailed account of HADR operations. Thank you so much. As I said, it couldn't have gone better than this. So thank you. At this point, I want to acknowledge the fact that we are joined by some of the distinguished people around the country today. And these people have taken time to join us. Several people from Defense Forces have joined. Colonel Sukumaran, most welcome. He has coordinated with you, sir, and he has helped us connect with you over the last few months. We have wing commanders, few of them have joined. People who worked in defense sector earlier and now gone into academics, they have joined. Major Dr. V.A. Narayana, who studied along with me in Osmania University College of Engineering. He has also joined. I welcome Major Dr. V.A. Narayana as well. All of you, thank you very much for taking time out to join this very, very interesting talk. What is going to be more interesting is the conversation when we have the Q&A, which is going to begin right now. We have two clusters of questions. The first one will be taken up by Professor Prasad, and the second cluster, I'll come back and we'll open the mic for some of you who will raise the hands in the second cluster to directly talk to Air Marshal Kumar. And I know it's a matter of great pride to talk to heroes like this. We will definitely provide that. That is the whole purpose of getting as close as possible to the leaders who are in front of us. And we'll be very, very happy to take those questions. And I'll request Air Marshal Kumar, sir, to stay a little longer. The night is going to be a little longer, and bear with us and answer all the questions, sir. With this, I will once again thank you and give it back to Professor Prasad to commence cluster number 1.
Thank you, Professor Rao. Sir, it's indeed a pleasure to speak to you and to try to understand and learn something of so much that has happened in the sphere of which you have tremendous experience. So to begin with, I'd ask a question which is, more recent and which you touched upon, and which is the Sudan operation. Recently, we had the IAF airlifting Indians stranded in Sudan under conditions of very high risk. And almost the way it was presented almost looked like a warlike operation because of the threats around. So can you brief us with this context? Because in that action, it is also a humanitarian gesture. So can you brief us on how this whole thing would have got unfurled? I mean, from the planning, I mean, you have given 4 R's: readiness, response, reduction, recover. So can you take us through taking that as a case study?
Okay, when you look at Sudan, we knew the problem when it started. But if you heard Mr. Jayashankar, our MEA, talking about it, it is not just the aeroplane itself. It is also our external affairs individuals, how they are coordinated with the citizens, Indian citizens working in Sudan, located where they are, how they have got those people together, get them safe, and also progressively how our country's international relationship has improved for us to go ahead and deal with different countries wherein it is both our soft power and interaction, which has improved their concern for us. Because the moment the problem started, we knew we could not land at Khartoum. So aeroplanes were moved to Saudi Arabia so that they could react at short notice. Similarly, we had an issue in Ukraine where the forces had to be moved. The question is, do they move towards Russia or the students, or move more towards the West to get them recovered? Here, we knew this manpower. These were collated and moved across. The C-130J Super Hercules is a tremendous aeroplane. So it has forward-looking infrared, which gives you a picture. And it is night vision goggle compatible. So compared to IL-76, which landed in 1988, no, we come a long way, because today capability of aeroplanes is much better. We had the Garud forces, our commando forces in it, so that we could secure that aeroplane. We today, you have, unlike in Maldives, actually speaking, when the crisis took place, we suddenly realized that we have absolutely no information on that country in terms of their what all is there in the airfield. It was on tourist maps that people operate. But today, the information is available. That is, you open a map, find the location, it gives you 3-digit GPS coordinates. So you know where it is. It is the rest of the threat that has to be looked after. But as I said, it is just not the Air Force flying it. It is actually a full package deal of a lot of people working, being strong to take these people along, being brave to get, because they would have been challenged at different checkpoints. And they were, Sudan, if you know, has a mix of two sets of rebels. You don't know whom you're going to come across, who does like your face, and they may just raid you for no rhyme or reason. So it is actually a classical case of how, and I said, it is not once. We have done it enough times from Yemen, from as I said, Afghanistan, Ukraine. We are now getting very good at not only Indian diaspora. There are people from other countries whom we have recovered, and they're very grateful to us.
Thank you, sir. I think the important points that come out are that this needs coordination at a far larger level, and there are multiple agencies which are involved, starting from the Ministry of External Affairs, to help rendered by a number of people before you can actually make it successful. That was the main point which came across from what you have briefed, sir.
That's right.
Yeah. So now I come to the second question. I'm going to combine a couple of questions here so that we save on time. And this is, do the Chanakya Niti principles work in the contemporary world? Now I'm also going to draw upon your, your expertise as a strategist. Looking at the geopolitical theater, the domestic necessities, the constraints, what are the key principles would you enunciate for a country like India to conduct itself? This is also another question that one of the audience members has asked. He's taken a very contra position, but that helps us to kind of reflect on the position. So a modern military is a finely tuned and sharpened tool. Using it for humanitarian aid, is a waste, in quotes, and it dulls its edge So he's looking forward to comments on that. So in the setting of where there is a constraint on resources and there are a lot of threats around in the environment, what kind of principles would you elaborate on for decision making for things which happen in the future?
Oh, I don't know where to start. It's a topic by itself what you're talking about. The issue is when I looked at, there was Mr. Rajan who used to teach me geopolitics in National Defense Academy. He had 4 simple rules. His rules were, like for human beings, it stands for countries. There are no permanent friends or permanent enemies. There are only permanent interests. Therefore, you have to keep a relationship going with everyone. You have to see that how he can be useful for what. 80 billion is what our expatriates sent back to India. This is not something. So they should be allowed, because the kind of population we have and the issues of jobs creation in India, we should allow them to go and work, and we should give them the confidence that we can protect them whenever this is required. The second issue is my enemy's enemy is my friend, right? So in that, it doesn't matter who it is. You can join sides because politics is the art of the unexpected, and you make a strange bedfellows, but that's okay. We also understand that the third point he said was no 2 large countries disproportionate in size having a common border can ever be friends. Yeah, of course, there are exceptions like India, or USA and Canada or something, but they'll always feel like a big brother. That's why we are unable to have regional grouping to take it forward. And regional grouping, the SARC got taken away by the fight between us and Pakistan. But there is a requirement. When you do business, best is to do business with your neighbors. It's more profitable and it is easy to be done. Unfortunately, we don't do. But I guess that is how it is. So we know naturally that they will not be friends. The fourth issue is Turkey has never sided with us ever because of their hardcore Erdogan logic. He's always supported Pakistan. It's not that because of that we stopped. We send aid to Turkey because we know for sure that anytime your neighbor is in trouble, don't gloat over it. It will cross the fence and reach you. So there is a requirement to have, and in what you call dealing in geopolitics, you don't have to tell a fool in his face. You have to see how we can use it whenever it is possible. That's what Chanakya Niti is all about.
Excellent, sir. I think the basic principles are very clear. At the next stage, when you have constraints which come up at the operational level, at the tactical level, you got something which is happening in the northern frontier, and then you got something which is happening on the disaster front. How do you resolve these issues?
So there will always be competing requirement for the existing resources. India is not a country which is so rich that it can take on all the tasks. Today, when you look at the GDP or the amount of money that China spends on defense, there's no way we can do. When I gave a talk at Lal Bahadur Shastri and looked at security, I said our biggest challenge today is how to see that our demographic dividend is maximized, how we can use it. That is more important. Therefore, we have to have a healthy and educated population, which is capable of delivering what is required for tomorrow. Therefore, you have to spend more on healthcare, education, infrastructure, even if it comes to defense. As far as defense is concerned, we have our plus and minus, right? I know we cannot compete with everybody, but we know our closest and biggest adversary is sitting on the north, and we have to ensure that he does not gain on us. So we have to then innovate. We find new methods to see how we can beat him. It could be a mix of everything. Today, it's a composite war. When we have a conflict today, It's just not the military. It's actually two nations fighting each other, right from cyber to environment to your friends. The whole lot is used. So today, when you look at our biggest adversary, he actually doesn't have very many friends he can talk of, because most of his friends are rogues. North Korea, Pakistan. You name those countries. Whereas we have our soft power and our interaction with most countries, which is much better than this. So you know how to leverage what strengths we have and capitalize on it.
Yes, sir. So the underlying point which comes out is that constraints are good and will help you to innovate, and you come out with newer ideas on how to come out of that particular situation, because constraints will always be there. And the other point,
Absolutely.
I think the other very important point that you made is that independent of all this, you need to put a priority on education, healthcare, and infrastructure building in terms of how resources are getting deployed.
That's right.
Thank you, sir. We come to the third question now. If you compare what we do as, say, the Indian Air Force, as the services, with what's happening in other countries for similar issues like for humanitarian and disaster, where do we stand? What do we know? What are the competencies that we are, where we are strong on, and where, and perhaps things where perhaps we have not been able to do that much? Are there nations like that which are doing so much that we are doing?
As I mentioned, being a tropical country, we are much more susceptible to such natural disasters than any other country. If you look at, say, weather in Europe, it's a frontal weather. I can predict it accurately well in advance. No, it is not a tropical country where the energy state varies dramatically. So a cyclone, you pick it up, but you don't know when it's going to hit and where it's going to hit. So we are very good. Each had his own problems. The hurricane in Katrina showed the weak areas of a powerful country like the United States. The substrata of how different societies are in different kind of problems. So it's not that we are comparable. We are quite nice as far as HADR is concerned, but we are susceptible. Today, they say the maximum damage from natural calamities is from cyclones. You call it by any name, hurricane, whatever, right? And the maximum 60% to 80% of damage maximization is in developing countries. And that's where the population is. That's where. So today, progressively, I just give you an example. Every time there should be a cyclone at my station when I used to operate, the electrical lines used to fall, and power supply took quite some time to restore. All these lines had to be progressive in small steps, all made underground. Right? It may be a small measure, but I'm just saying, if a country like that you require to do this, it's fine. But if you don't have these problems of population, then for a smaller nation, it is easier to handle. But I would say we are comparable or any country, anywhere. And the training of our NDRF forces is progressively becoming so good that they have all the equipment and the training required to do rescues. And we have done everything. I remember, we have rescued people from cable cars. We have rescued trekkers who got lost in areas which, we could not find, but we traced them and located, picked them up. So I guess we are good, not an issue.
Fantastic, sir. I think you're also pointing out at a strategic advantage, given that this is something that has so much of experience the country has in this sort of a diversity, which if it gets organized as a competency, as a capability, and that too useful with other developing countries, indeed it helps in relationship building and even far beyond that. And perhaps even for things which will happen tomorrow, maybe missions to Moon, Mars, because there can be all sorts of disasters all over the place. And whatever
Absolutely.
one has learned earlier can help you.
Absolutely. Tsunami is with all the problems that we had, we were able to help most of the countries which had issues in Indonesia. And they were so welcoming our help because we had that capability which could show which is much better than this.
Absolutely, sir. So there is a strategic advantage in that.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I think I'll conclude this cluster for the time being, hand it back to Professor Rao. We are at 7:34.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Sir, the case studies are extremely interesting, and that's the way we have been learning at our B school, and also now probably teaching the same thing in our B schools across the country. It is always said that lots of business schools and management institutions have learned from the strategies and the cases developed by the armed forces, the defense forces, so to say. I think these are some of the case studies which were given, very exciting, and the way it has it has resonated with us in terms of preparing some of the young leaders to face the adversities, to face some uncertainties in the years to come. I think we also have to go a long way, but yes, this is the right kind of learning that we can provide. Even if it is remote, I'm sure lots of them are going to watch this, come back and watch this on our archives as well. Sir, permit me to start this cluster number 2, and I request all the members in the audience to raise their hands if they have any questions to ask directly. We will open the mic for you. Before that, I will take the first question. Sir, the humanitarian assistance and disaster relief operations have been wide-ranging, from calamity to calamity, man-made to natural calamities. Everywhere, the disasters have been far and wide. There have been several learnings, as you have listed as well. What is the way Indian Air Force internalizes this learning from the experiences of HADR? Request you to suggest ways to internalize organizational learning by way of strategy implementation.
It's a big question, but I said locally also we have to see how we can help out. When we had the Kerala floods, other than sending relief and helicopters and transport aircraft, a lot of relief materials also collected at different stations to see how we take it forward. And we are monitoring what they're trying, what they want. So initially they said, look, we may not want food, but we require utensils to cook it because they had lost everything, but the rations were available. Just a point on that. So we looked at all those Air Force people who are on leave in that area. And we said, you continue on leave as long as you're helping out as far as this measures are concerned. All those who are also available, who are from that location, we said, we'll give you, LTC, you go home because you're able-bodied. Because what happened in Kerala was that the floods flooded a large area, but that strange state had a problem that it had a lot of elderly people. The youngsters are gone looking for jobs somewhere else. So about 1 million houses lying vacant. So there were gaps in houses. So there was an issue of manpower not being available. So these issues we internalize and see, okay, how can we help? So to give an example, I am from the 55th course in NDA, which is also the color course. We got the colors, presidential colors during my time, but that is incidental. So we are about close to about 250 of us who studied together from 76 to 78 in National Defense Academy. Now they have settled down all over India. They're all retired. They all are senior citizens. But we have formed a company and we formed a grouping. So now we have quick reaction teams at every base, say Hyderabad. I know exactly how many of my course mates are here. So I know that for the entire pan-India. So when it came to COVID, we knew if anybody was in trouble, where was he staying? What did he want? Did he want food? Did he want somebody to take him to the hospital? Or did he have a relative or friend who was in trouble in that sector? So though we have contributed some to form a company, we do help out. Of course, of this 250, we already lost about 35, 40 of us. So we look after all the ladies. and see how we contribute if their children get married and things like that. So what I'm trying to say is, you can have a support system of your own. Like, where RWAs can group together and instead of, looking at only their own growth, they look in that area as to how to help out and see if there's a crisis tomorrow. It could be anything. It could be a fire, which will happen anyway. Have you catered for adequate firefighting? Are you catered for, because there is a government is there to help, but immediately, if you have to be safe and your property has to be safe, you will have to get up and do something about it. You just can't leave it up.
Fantastic, sir. Get up and do something. We can't leave it alone. I think such mindsets sets apart the heroes from the rest. Amazing. The two important lessons that you've given us is the resourcefulness, and resourcefulness comes from knowing your resources too well in terms of knowing where your people belong to and deploying those people with local knowledge back into the area of disaster where the help is supposed to be deployed. I think that's an amazing lesson. The second one is creating your own support system, but building it in peacetime, not just at the time of war, but at the time of crisis, but during the non-crisis times. If you take care of your people, know them too well, understand where they are, you build your own support system internally. For example, it is something akin to what institutions do: alumni tracking, alumni asset building, and then working out very genuine programs for alumni of all kinds, studied from institutions, people who worked in your organization but left now, but you still keep in touch with them. That's the reason most of them are now available around the screen watching these conversations. Most of them may not be currently working with us, but they come back to learn, they come back to contribute in all ways. So it's a great lesson, sir. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, you're right when you say knowing that language, knowing the environment, and the social norms allows him to adjust that much easier. Because there would be people who may not all be speaking English or Hindi. You're absolutely right on that part.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. The second question I would like to go before I open the mic for Dr. Lakshman is, what is the scope of computer vision and AI in humanitarian assistance and disaster relief using drones and UAVs, so on and so forth?
AI has got a lot of help. As I said, if any and everywhere, if I have a number 112 where you can ring up an emergency, it may not be easy for everybody. There could be times, that number you're not getting. But if you have a place, AI has a biggest role, because if you can collate data as to where the problem is. I remember Gujarat floods, where they wanted help in rescuing large amount of cattle. I said, look, there's no way I can help you as far as cattle is concerned. But we can find a way of finding people who can push them to a place where it can be helped. Because such floods, a lot of animals die. And it is something which is very sad, but that's what happens. But if I can have a place where this information is coming in, is collated, and it lets me know, okay, these people have been rescued, or there is a pregnant lady there which requires emergency relief, where you can direct your forces to that area. And when you look at, as you mentioned, everything is based on case study and how things move. I'm sorry, I just want to tell you a story.
Yes,
it may be slightly long, but what happened was, in December of 1977, we were traveling by train from Pune, from National Defense Academy, going on leave. And we're traveling from Pune to Chennai. And middle of the night, at 1 o'clock in the morning, you can say, close to about 200, 250 kilometers from Chennai, the last 4 bogies of train got derailed. So we were sitting in the first class compartment, which was third from the end. So we are sitting at that time, luckily we were awake. Suddenly there was a bang. The lights went off. The place was full of dust, and we were totally disoriented. The track was on high ground. The train fell on the right side, and it was continuing to tilt. So actually now I was sitting on that black colored rickety fan you have on the first class compartment. I was sitting on that, and the full cushion of the first class had fallen on us. It had just come off. But you're disoriented. There was pin drop silence for some time. Nothing. A pregnant pause, you can say. And then a lot of shrieking and crying. What happened was these last 4 bogies got detached, but the train continued rolling for another 1.5 kilometers. It was a dark night, no moon, and we were stuck there. It was just momentarily that we had this issue. We had close to about 10 of us in that first class, but we also had close to about 42 of us in the sleeper compartment, which was third from the engine. So now what we did was, and those are times with no mobiles, 1977, right? And we managed to get out of the boat. Then we coordinated. We got everybody out, which is possible. There were injuries are not much. One person died, which we could not trace who he was because there was no ticket evidence. And about 5 people were injured in that whole thing. We progressively removed all of them and brought them to the left, made them sit down. We lit a fire because there were stories of, when you have situations like this, that the local population comes in and tries to loot you or something. It's not to do anything with any person. And, if he's unable to take out a ring or a watch of a person injured, they cut off the finger or something. It's that kind of drastic stories. So we had to light the fire to ensure that, this is absolutely no light, how to. But then we ran across to our sleeper coach, got our forces, NDA students, cadets from there. And now we help others to get up. We also had to pick up our slippers, and we were all wearing lungis, this train going to south. The lungis are all missing. We had to get some shorts and trousers to wear because in that melee you couldn't find anything. Yes, there were some people who would refuse to come out without the luggage. We accepted, we have no issue. But we got together, got everybody out where possible. The relief train came next day morning because the main train which had got, which from these 4 bogies were detached, it left after some time and went to the next railway station. The relief train came in by next morning. By then, we have got people under control. And why would such a thing happen? Because we were just, cadets who were 17 to say 19, 20 years old. But what did it make a difference? There was initiative. There was an idea of problem solving. There was clear hierarchy. We had seniors, we had juniors. Seniors, the opinion was given by everybody, but the senior took a decision. Okay, you go there, get this, you get this, get him here. There was a hierarchy. There was a tendency to take charge. We were young, but because we were organized, we are not in uniform, nothing. That those people were affected, were willing to listen to us. The next day morning, the relief train came in. We helped all these people load onto that relief train, which took us to the next station. And in Chennai, the local newspaper had an article of what all we had done to help, which went to NDA also, which gave us a praise. And they also, I missed my next connecting train to Cochin, so they gave me a reservation for the next day also. But what I'm trying to say is, even at that stage, that's where you find NCC cadets. If they're organized there, they are so useful because they just are set of people who are educated, who are willing to help, who have spare capacity, and they can do magic. Sorry for the story, it was long, but
it's a pretty strong story given the lessons, right? It has got preparedness in the sense the mental readiness, the initiative and the willingness to solve the problem and the tendency to take charge, in your own words. I think that is something which is important for us. Only people like you, when you share stories like this, we understand that a soldier is a soldier no matter what time it is, no matter which location it is. I mean, that's a fantastic full story of how you faced an adversity that came your way, least expected, of course, completely unexpected. And you were part of the crisis yourself. And that throws several lessons for all of us, sir. Wonderful. Thank you so much. I will request Dr. Lakshman to raise his question. Over to you, Dr. Lakshman.
Thank you very much, sir. Hi, sir. How are you, sir?
Good evening, sir. How are you?
Yeah, so I'm very good, sir. Everything is going fine. Sir, first of all, I'll begin with my talk with a thank you to you and what we had done and what you guys are doing. Okay.
It's a pleasure.
And the other part, sir. And the other thing is, sir, you are taking, you are crossing the borders and giving the unconditional love and help to the people in the other countries and filling our hearts, the Indian hearts around the world with the pride and getting the pride. Okay, in the same way, you are showing the world, if you are, if we are ready to help you and we are ready to fight with you, and you are crossing the border and you are crashing everything over there and filling every Indian with pride and the youth, especially around, the Indians around the world with pride and teaching them as what Guru would do. And India, once upon a time, India was a Guru to the world. And you are the same, at this point of time, you are also showing the same to the world, sir. And because I'm feeling it and all the individuals are feeling it. That's why I'm just communicating this to you, sir. Heartfully, I'm just saying thanks to you that. And that is one thing, sir. And now currently India is the, youth, more number of youth in India, and we are the youngest country in the world. And you are trying to, you are teaching literally by showing something like a presentation, practical presentation that you're showing and teaching them, all the youth in around the world, and filling everybody's heart with the pride. So that is what I like a lot, sir. Seriously, so I just want to say you thanks, sir. I don't have any question to you. So I'm very glad to listen to your presentation, and I'm very happy that I involved in this presentation, sir. Thank you very much for everything, sir. That's it.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Lakshman. Very nice to hear such good words. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Lakshman. Thank you, sir, for this response. There's another question in the chat box. I'll take that up before I go back to the questions that I already have. Madam Chitra, Dr. Chitra is asking, as students learn only theoretical part of the subject but no practical exposure, so is there any provision to have an internship or apprentice programs run by defense forces?
I'll have to think about it in a sense. Yeah, if you look at Agniveer, I guess we would have a larger number of people now who would be more disciplined and trained in the present set of policies that we have. Conscription is not a good idea on a country like us because we have a large defense force. And to train them, the effort required will be one hell of a lot. I don't think there's internship possible because training itself is very specific and quite hard. And there should be willingness to go through it. It is not that you do it for a short while, because when we look at defense, we said it's not an employment, it is a lifetime commitment in that sense, to say, because finally you're there willing to do whatever is required, go anywhere that is required for the country, and that requires a commitment. I guess that ethos does not pass on, because finally, when I look at the service, what it taught me, other than now that I'm in civil, is a question of trust. Trust. And the trust was so important that if I went to fly an aeroplane, There are 8 people who had signed. I'm a fighter pilot. 8 people who have signed. There's 7 trained and 1 supervisor to say everything has been checked. And it was a trust to say, yes, he would have done it. Because in a fighter aeroplane, I just have to leave a screwdriver in the intake to sort my problem, make a big problem for me. So I'm saying it is a trust. The trust that the fellow person who's flying with me is capable and he will not, collide with me. That trust is something which is phenomenal. Phenomenal that if I tell somebody something, I don't have to repeat it. I just tell him once and just presume that it is understood the way it was intended, and that's how it is. That element of trust is what is not easy, because again, it is a question of where you were brought up and how you did things. I'm sure a jailer will not trust very many people because of the kind of people he deals with. But that element of trust, the sanctity of every word you said, is something which I really cherish on the service. So I don't think any internship could add on to it. It is forming a team and then looking after it. I don't think I've answered this question, but at the moment, not a good idea.
No, thank you so much. You said that to make you airborne, there are at least 7 to 8 personnel who will be responsible to make you airborne and safe at the same time. So it comes with loads of responsibility and ownership, which results in the trust factor in you, in the sense that you will trust them and very peacefully you pierce into the skies. I think that reliability factor will come not easily. Civilian organizations will have to learn a great deal of working, reorientation, and commitment and discipline in order to reach that kind of stage. But with the example that you have given, there is a lot for us to learn and work on. Yes, everybody would like to take pride in the fact that if our youngsters get some opportunity in terms of apprenticeship, it will be great. Well, maybe that was the point of view from the prof who was asked the question. But good, it is also said in general, when certain youngsters are not disciplined and they're actually going wayward, it was mentioned generally that everyone in the country should get training in the armed forces and the defense forces, so that even if one were to come back to civilian forces and work in private and government, they would be very disciplined, committed, high level of ownership and responsibility would be seen within them. So that was the context probably in which the prof is mentioned.
And get up early in the morning.
Get them early in the morning and get them early in the game, in the sense pretty young age they should get on to these kind of things. Only few people get this opportunity and get this opportunity of serving the country for 39 to 40 years like the way you have done, being part of the IAF. So that's amazing, sir. I'll take just one more question and see if others have anything to interact with you directly. In the meantime, this question, sir. Curiosity is the background. So the question is, who decides on the extent and reach of such relief and assistance that you provide? In terms of crisis and all, where do we get the directives from? Is it a political outfit or someone else, or is there an internal system that is there? Who decides the scope? Who decides the extent and reach of this assistance?
The funny part is, it is a question of help. Today, a DM can decide and say he can ask for help to the closest service center. That is the rule. So it's a question of demand. What does he want? And you expand it from district to state to country. There are definitions of different calamities, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and all, which has got different issues in terms of funds. We will not go into it. That is not the issue. Today, if there is a help required, a state government pleads for help, we give them help, depending on what he wants. But he may not know exactly where all he wants it. But if he says, look, this is my problem, we find a solution, we give it. So it is not that it is quantified. And because we have NDMA now, which sees it. Now, when you look at any cyclone now, is already anticipated. NDRF forces are already there. They looked at all the shelters that are available. Are they well stocked? How to move the population there? Where exactly is going to hit? So it is much more geared up than what it was, say, like 1984 when Bhopal gas tragedy took place. The requirement was please send helicopters to. At that time, we didn't have Bambi weapon. We had something called, when helicopters went and landed in a desert area, they had sand suppression. It had a chemical which you glue down so that sand did not fly. Otherwise, it starts a mushroom kind of thing when you land, which reduces visibility and gets all the dust in. That was used in the carbide factory to suppress the gases. We had absolutely no idea. Those guys who went had no idea what exactly is the problem. But he was willing to help and see, okay, I have this. Let's see if we can use it and see where it works. But I must say, the dedication is there of our people, and is a day-night activity. They also, in a different NDRF forces when they're working in a flood area. So they also have to eat something. They also got to rest sometime. They also got to go to the toilet. No, nothing is available. They have come to a new place. You get my point? So they have to have the mindset to say, okay, I'm just hang on and see how it is done. Because if there's total flood, he must carry water himself because there's no water to drink. No. So in that environment, it's not a question of what is the requirement. We are willing to help and give whatever is required. Yes, India is a federal setup, and we wish that the federal setup is honored and held, is not partisan in that sense. And there are rules and regulations for everything. If you ask me on HADR, there is an Oslo guidelines. Oslo guidelines, which says that it has to be humanitarian aid, which is impartial, which is looking at neutrality and respecting the sovereignty of the people of the country. Though there are a lot of countries who try to look at HADR in different ways of interfering in different countries based on law and order and things like that. But India is looking at purely national calamities. But we have graded response in terms of what is we also have a system where whatever the damage is also assessed. And that assessment starts from panchayat level to see who all lost how much, so that aid comes from the state, because state may not be able to help total, comes to the from the center, and how that distribution takes place. So we have a system which is in place, which is time tested, and there human beings make an organization. There are good and bad people in it, but the organization is good.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you very much, sir. The summary of what you said is that NDMA is now quite seasoned, and the response and the relief has to be as per the demand, and the mindset to take decisions and get things done is probably that drives the operations, and that's how it moves. Of course, we are a federal country, and therefore there are several entities and units and agencies that one has to deal with, but that comes later. Responding to the quantum of demand of help is the primary motive for the people in HADR who are providing that help. Thank you so much, sir. I will take the next question, and that question is about MiG-21s. The current perception and knowledge about MiG-21 is that it claims several precious lives of brave soldiers of our country. When, over the last several years, actually, decades, when do you think these will be completely phased out? That's the question.
No, the MiG-21s will be phased out shortly. We also have to understand that as far as the Air Force is concerned, it will never, ever fly an unserviceable aeroplane. It has been checked out. It is that these aeroplanes are the 1950 vintage. No, they were already operationalized in 1950. Today, you can't drive a car which is more than 15 years old if it's petrol and 10 years for diesel. No, your registration is not valid. So these aeroplanes were made, they land at a speed which only the space shuttle did. And the space shuttle has been, is obsolete now. So what we have to understand is, we bought this as, because at one time, we were non-aligned, but unfortunately, we were more non-aligned towards the Russians. And that's how we got these aeroplanes, because everybody is not willing to give it to us. And because we bought in large quantities, the number of accidents is also more. But statistics is a big liar. Statistics has its own mathematics of it. So if you have large number, if, for example, a statistic said that data was collected of early 60s in America and said maximum amount of road accidents are by black colored cars at night, right? So normally somebody will say, yeah, it could not be spotted. It is not, because at night you can't see any color. Night, you see only light. You can't see the color of the car at all. But most of the cars were black in color that day. The fancy colors came up much later. They were either white or black. So data can be misread. This aeroplane is going to get phased out because it is, if you today you look at modern aeroplane, much easier to fly them. Older aeroplanes were very tough to fly because of the aids in it. Today, a modern aeroplane has got too much of information coming, which is another problem. Flying it is easy, but to now coordinate all this information that's coming to you and take action is the biggest challenge in these fighter aeroplanes now. MiG-21 has done a yeoman service. I've flown it for lots of hours and lots of sorties. And I would say that all these names the poor aeroplane got as a coffin maker and all that, I think is unfair, because there are few aeroplanes and few designs of aeroplanes which survived so many years. If it was not good, it would have been phased out a long time.
Amazing, amazing story. That's the inside view of on MiG-21s, and you have actually given quite a balanced view of how that should be looked at. There is one participant who's saying that my father also retired from defense and was in 21 Squadron. Very proud to be part of defense. Hats off to all the people serving in defense.
Thank you, sir.
I'm very happy to read that out for you, sir. Thank you. So other question is, how can we project this disaster relief as a specialization in management education? Any views on that?
So today in America, you have people who are willing to stand in line on payment. I'll just give you an example. No, so he has something new, new Apple phone is coming, or it is a Black Friday. The line starts. He's taking money to stand in line. He stands the previous night. He sleeps there, takes spot, and he gives you the spot next day morning. What I'm trying to say is, there's a business in everything. Every calamity could be war, otherwise. Somebody profits. No, it's unfair. That's how the world is. So you can have a business model in anything to see how to help people in, it could be just insurance claims, or how to go about in putting down your claims. So, or how to mitigate the damage before an event happens or after an event happens. But it is a question of how you can make it more feasible, make it workable. And in that process, you are also helping people. It's not that you're making money yourself, you're helping people.
Right. Thank you so much. There's another interesting question. What kind of training is provided to disaster relief personnel so that they adequately handle emergencies?
So let me tell you a case. When tsunami hit, it was on the 26th morning, that is a day after Christmas in December and 2004. A good friend of mine, he was a commanding officer of 122 helicopter unit at Kumar. Right. So early in the morning, when they're standing on the terrace, he saw the sea retreating. The sea just retreated. 800, 1 kilometer, just retreated. And tsunami was not in the lexicon of words because it was something which was rare. It was something rare, right? He saw that and said something is wrong. He and his family ran towards the airfield, which was high ground. Let's pause here and go what happened the previous evening. In his house, it had a 4 bungalows kind of structure, and he had bought a new car. His new car was parked in the garage. His young son had taken his cycle out, and when he came back to park his cycle, he crashed the car. So he was upset. Yeah, paint nikal diya, new car and all. When this happened, they all ran towards the edge. He took off in his pajamas and banyan. He flew for 5.5 hours continuously. Every time he came back, refueled, well, to see how he could help our people. Within that campus, a lot of people lost their life. I think approximately 119 or so lost their lives. Families and people together. And they continued. In the whole process, he had no idea where his children were or what his family were. He knew last he had left them there. When he got airborne the first time in his helicopter, the tsunami had already hit. The wave had already hit. The house in which he ran out from was removed from the face of the earth. There was nothing there. There's absolutely nothing. So what I'm trying to say is, where people are actually physically affected, you have to treat them with empathy. No, it is a lot of shock. It is not as simple as something you just fell down or something. It is he has lost everything of his which he had collated over time. Some things as important as his albums, his memories, things like that. But that's it. That's how life is, right? So for training to get them there, this NDRF, more and more they see such operations, see how they're helping our people. It's a training process which cannot be replicated. You cannot. How can you replicate a disaster? But with time, these people are becoming better because they're getting real-time experience. And as I said, it's not sympathy. They're not doing any favor. But they are having full empathy for these people because they are seeing the tragedy firsthand.
Amazing, sir. Amazing. It comes back to us again and again that being in the forefront and looking at the problem, looking at the damage and the disaster, and manifesting that empathy into relief operations. There are so many connotations for civilian life, for life in general, for all of us that we can learn from this particular example which you have given. There is no standardized technique for training. They get better as they handle real-time cases, and there's no question of replicating a disaster, obviously. But empathy is the cornerstone of leadership, and that's where HADR completely stands out in all the cases that we have seen. Thank you so much, sir. And there's another question I would like to ask and then close. We can probably close it after this, if you permit. Several HADR operations have been successful, and there are some criticisms as well. When you deal with media, or when media deals with HADR, there is politics that is involved, and there are several people that criticize. For example, 1999 Odisha cyclone or 2013 Uttarakhand floods or 2020 Delhi riots. In all these cases, we have heard the contra, we have heard the criticism that the government's handling has been ineffective and slow. And how does leadership at HADR deal with these things? How do you manage to cut off from this noise of what's going on in media, what's being talked about by various agencies? How do you manage to cut off this noise, sir?
So in such an event, when there is a casualty, the emotions are running high. There is no way you can give individual attention to everybody. It is not possible. I'm saying Uttarakhand flood. We knew what we had to do. But today in India, if you're a VIP, it's fine. But everybody knows some VIP. The amount of phone calls to say, so-and-so is stuck there. We can't prioritize. We cannot say he to be lifted on priority. It won't be fair. What I'm trying to say is, so we have to be impartial to say, fair enough, everybody in the same boat. You see how we can rescue it. So there would be unhappiness. I am not saying that everything is honky-dory, but to reach there is so difficult to reach there. No, and to help out, you say anything. You want to get boats there. Boats have to be picked up from somewhere else to be brought there. I know there's a golden hour there to see how, but if everything is expected to work in a jiffy, in an environment which is totally different, may not be, is expecting too much. No, the idea is you're saved, you're taken out. Itself should be a bonus, because so many have lost their lives, who had nowhere to go. But I said, that's how life is. Lightning hits your neighbor, right? You can sympathize, but the issue is you have to understand you're also very close to it. Very lucky that you survived.
Correct. Amazing. Amazing are the ways and means in which you stand strong in the face of adversity. Most of us in civilian organizations, we are worried about what others are thinking about us, even during the crisis. While we are grappling with bits and pieces of resorting to normalcy, we are more worried. We keep an ear and an eye on what others are saying, and sometimes that lowers our energy and focus and attention that's required to handle the problem on hand. This is a great tip and lesson that you have given. For any organization, military or non-military, handling so many diverse forces is a very big challenge, and no amount of appreciation, praise will be appropriate or deserving, in the sense we won't be able to make it in an appropriate manner as much as one gets down to be part of the HADR activities itself. Thank you so much, sir. I will request Professor Prasad if he has any question to ask, then I'll come back and wrap it up, sir.
Yeah, I have a question which has struck me, during the conversation, and this is about the term fighter pilot. I'm well aware there was an aspiration at one point in life not to write anything else.
Hang on, how did you steal my question?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah. So, I mean, this is connected to the fact that it is a special breed. It is known as a special breed. For people who try to get into NDA, it is known as a special breed. There are people who write only that. I happened to be one of them before I moved into a different track. The connected question is that we also discussed this element of trust. There was a question about internships, etc. And then we realized that there are certain types of competencies which need deep mindsets. There are deep values. There are lots of things there. It's not just, skills. There are lots of things there. So how do you define the values to distinguish a fighter pilot? Because many of those things are very, very important to life today at the forefront, social sphere, scientific sphere. So what are those values?
One is you have to have an adventurous spirit. You have to have, I won't say a kink it's not dangerous. It's not, but if you say fighter flying or military aviation, the risk factor is definitely more than, say, a normal flight, right? So you're willing to take it on. But this challenge itself is something which allows your adrenaline to pump in. It's something like, today you are playing a virtual reality game. It's something which excites you every time. The funny part of life is, as a fighter pilot, only thing we thought of was flying. And every time they wanted to punish us for doing something wrong, this is stop us from flying. I say, you can't do that. You're paying me for it. So the question is, they said, no, you're not, done so-and-so parade properly, you cannot fly. So that kind of thought process, whatever happens, as far as flying is concerned, you have to be disciplined. You have to be physically fit. And you have to have a systematic way of approach. For example, in life, once you are doing that, if I'm getting ready, then I first wear my left socks, then my left shoes, tie my left laces. Then I go my right socks, right shoes, and right laces. If I carry a white handkerchief in my right pocket. These are things we should never change. What I'm trying to say is, you have to go systematically. I have to do checks and procedures. It has to be systematic so that you don't miss out something. That missing out may be dangerous at times. Because finally, what they teach us, taught us how to do blindfold checks and procedures. That means without looking, as a fighter pilot, I could touch that switch and operate it. When he says, okay, so-and-so emergency, I should be able to operate it. And my hand is instinctively going there. So you have a systematic approach. That keeps you safer. And as I said, there has to be that adrenaline in you to look for challenges, look for something which is difficult to be done.
Excellent, sir. I think the risk-taking ability is what is common. Professor Sudhakar, I think there's a question from Colonel Kumar who's posted it.
Yeah.
You may take it on.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you for answering that question. I will ask my question towards the end. I thought I'll keep it towards the end, but somebody stole my question, sir. But it's okay. I will still ask that question for record's sake. Colonel Sukumaran has asked a question. So within the constraints of confidentiality, anything from the Air Marshal on the surgical strike, would you like to let us know about the Balakot surgical strike that you planned and executed on 26th of Feb 2019, sir?
I guess we are run out of time because it takes time. It can't just start what happened, how it happened. It is a question of, you have to tell how it all began. So we will leave it for another day. I'm sure that there would be an opportunity sometimes. And as I said, I have penned it down. It's not that I will forget. So we will catch up with some other time.
Amazing, sir. I'm not going to take a no for this one. We will definitely come back to you. And this is going to be really, really interesting. The much talked about Balakot strikes. I think we deserve to learn from you, sir. We will come back to you. We'll see how we can capture that and give it back to our participants today in a remote manner, maybe in terms of a mail or a video, another online discussion without.
We can
do that. Thank you so much, Colonel Sukumaran, for asking that amazing question. Thank you. I want to thank all the participants for their patient attendance today in terms of the ability to sit peacefully and listen to a war hero, a veteran who has so much to tell us, so much lessons to. He has actually put everything together in an easier manner that we all can understand and apply in our own domain. Thank you so much, all of you. But for the benefit of some of them who have joined a little late, I'll do a brief summing up of the session, sir, if you permit.
Sure.
The humanitarian assistance and disaster relief is the topic on which Air Marshal Kumar has talked about. It is understood that the geographical location of India has made it prone to natural calamities. Environmental degradation is another thing which made the matters obviously worse. However, a whole of country approach to mitigate the damages due to such calamities, coupled with increased awareness, organizational strength and training has reduced losses. In the process, the military has been the first one in and the last one out in such situations, with the Indian Air Force playing a very, very crucial role all the times. Because the ubiquity of air power makes it the fastest and the most efficient means of providing relief. And I'm sure today we have learned and gained several insights on the role of IAF in disaster management and relief operations. That's how we started. And Air Marshal Kumar has given us the vision and the approach and the structure of the organization that is involved in the HADR operations. And some of the key touch points that I would like to mention that Sir has covered and we have to note down are the following few. The defense forces have always been there in support of the civil administration across all contingencies. I mean, that's a major takeaway that we have witnessed in the past, and we have learned today in the explanation of various case studies that have been cited. And that fact that the disasters are bound to be more, given our own predicament, given the geographical location, disasters are bound to be there, and we need to just watch out as much as you can. The several zones that we have, almost 60 earthquake-prone zones that we are living with, I'm sure makes us much more alert. The important lessons that we have drawn from the organization of HADR is basically discipline, that is the excellent discipline, organizational cohesiveness, pan-India footprint, the capability for logistics, and the operational capability itself. I think if a civilian organization maps itself against these parameters like discipline and cohesiveness and all, I'm sure the reality check will be done very well. How cohesive is our organization? Well, although we may be pan-India, we may have footprint across the country in different states, but how cohesive is the organization? Just because an organization survives for a longer time doesn't mean, the longevity doesn't mean cohesiveness, but I think cohesiveness means good results. I think that is something which we'll have to bring into our own organizational building. The other thing is the 4 R's that are very interestingly explained to us: readiness, response, relief, and recovery. These are the things that HADR hinges itself on. The other thing is we need to remember the 112. When there's a disaster, we need to call 112. A lot of educated people do not know, they don't make note of it. I think we need to. Several youngsters are taught, and probably when we actually enact these things, when we work and demonstrate these things, they'll pick up. That is, whenever you go to a new location, look at where is the nearest hospital, look at where is the nearest post office, in case that is the context. Look at where is the nearest police station, and then being aware as a citizen. In one of those things is you should be aware that 112 is the number that one has to call in terms of disaster. First, worry about your own survival and then communicate. And when you're communicating, call 112 and help the forces to reach us and provide the necessary help. The other thing that we all have to learn is that the used clothes are of no use. I think that is a very important point that we should be sensitized about. Another important factor we have understood and discovered now is that for HADR operations, those people who are alive are first rescued, and those who are dead will be given a dignified closure. I mean, I'll repeat this. Those who are alive will be rescued, and those who are unfortunately dead will be given a dignified closure. And these are the priorities on which it works as part of mitigating the damages. These have to be handled. The preparedness, prior communication, and various remedial measures that one can take up as we move along from experience 1 to experience N makes us a stronger organization, whether it is HADR or in civilian life. These are the things that you will have to understand. Diplomacy, maturity, as Air Marshal has mentioned to us some time back, you don't have to tell a fool on his face. I mean, that Chanakya Niti response when he was mentioning, that's a very important point for us to take home and implement. And just focus on doing your best against these constraints. And of course, being resourceful and building your own support system, as I explained earlier, also knowing who are going to be the best people in a given situation with their local knowledge of culture and language and also geography. I'm sure we need to know the people and their strengths and deploy accordingly for the requirement that arises, of course, not with much of advanced notice. AI is going to help all of us in not only identifying the patterns of data and information and directing the forces towards the point of relief that has to be provided. In modern day relief operations, these are going to help us quite a bit with advanced information that's available, and with the projections that we can make on the risks that are lying ahead, we can use these emerging technologies. The story that you narrated when you sprang to action, I'm sure springing to action at any point in time is a quality in itself that the defense forces have displayed. One such example was your train journey in 1977 December from Pune to Chennai, and then the train got derailed, and how you, being part of the victims, you rose to your duty and saved everyone and put them to safety in the given constraints. That is amazing. But two important points that you mentioned there is that you got to hear them out. Several people do not respond to the way you want them to respond, because they are not lumps of luggage or pieces of baggage to be lifted from one place to another place. We have attachments, and more tangible attachments like our luggages. Even in the face of a danger and a disaster, we don't leave our luggages, physical luggages as well. So to hear them out and understand their concerns and their resistances, and then reach out to the victims in crisis. That's an amazing lesson that we have learned. But the bigger point is the initiative and the mindset to problem solving and the tendency to take charge. And Air Force or any defense force for that matter is not an employment. It's not a mere employment. It is a life that is being committed in the service of the nation. I think that's a very, very strong point that you have mentioned. The way the teams are disciplined, the organization is so cohesive that the trust factor is phenomenally higher. I mean, no emphasis is enough on the word phenomenal, because you don't have to tell them twice, thrice to make sure that they are reliable, but everyone does their role and the trust factor is pretty high. The NDMA is quite seasoned, and one is building a mindset to get things done. There are guidelines, there are examples and case study, but it's only going to go better as we move forward. The other thing and a very important aspect I wanted to mention here is my question, sir. My question is very important. I'm very selfish. I want to be a fighter pilot in my next life because it was not possible this life. So tell me, what is the preparation that I have to make for that? I mean, in a way, I'm trying to ask the same question, but I just picked it.
Just be normal, because fighter pilots are also human beings. So it is all. Anyway, thanks a lot for giving me this opportunity, and Professor Sudhakar Rao has covered it much better than what I spoke for.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for these 123 minutes of wisdom that you have provided us today, this evening, and all our participants, I'm sure, are quite enriched with the knowledge and the wisdom that you have shared. I can't thank you enough on behalf of everyone at ICFAI, on behalf of Professor Prasad, on behalf of all the senior leadership team at the ICFAI headquarters as well, and all the campuses that they have joined, and outsiders, the friends who have joined. They have been joining regularly, but this topic has been of a particular interest to a large number of people. I want to thank each one of them for chipping in with their interesting and curious questions and making the whole conversation a very, very interesting conversation. You are leaving us with an urge to ask for more. We will definitely take that offer, sir. We will come back to you, and we will seek a little more, especially on the surgical strike at Balakot. in 2019. We'll definitely come back to you, sir. But before that, I want to tell everyone in the audience that great lessons are there for all of us. The great lessons that I have just explained. More than that, preparedness in the face of uncertainty, risk-taking, dedication, commitment, building the teams that are highly reliable and trustworthy. I think these are general lessons for all of us. And don't forget the 112 that we have to dial in the face of disaster, and keep extreme trust on the HADR teams that are going to visit us, which they have visited all the time, and they are going to visit again should you face any difficulty around you in your neighborhood in a situation that is completely unexpected. With gratitude and also the satisfaction of learning from you, sir, we would like to sign off.